Broadcasting to you on WNN 1470 AM and TrentoVision.tv from the world's leading think tank laboratory, buried deep in an undisclosed building in hostile territory where evil and corruption is exposed. You're about to enter the Tom Trento Show.
All hands man in battle station.
Tom Trento heads United West, a group that says it defends Western civilization against the onslaught of Islam.
Right now, ladies and gentlemen, we have an important presidential announcement. Just in project. Get ready to listen to this stunning announcement from the President of the United States about our good friends, the Muslims in the Islamic Society in North America. Here we go. Now.
Oh my goodness. Oh. Oh.
Thank you.
Oh my. And next year in Jerusalem.
All right, Mike, get ready to flip.
Oh.
Mike, get ready to switch to Net 2 here, because I'm going to read you something else, not necessarily by the President of the United States.
Oh, actually, send it back in. For some reason, it dropped off.
Okay.
Oh no, that
Well,
was just too much.
Wasn't it though?
It's too bad we didn't have the video clip of the president's greetings to the Jewish community on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, in which he chastised us all for not being, not helping the peace process enough.
I know.
I guess we're not good Americans who raise our families and support the United States and promote interfaith dialogue and everything else, right?
Not enough entrepreneurs.
Not enough Jewish entrepreneurs in this country, not compared to the Muslims.
Well, I have something very interesting to read to you about ISNA. Now, this doesn't come, like I said, necessarily from the President of the United States. It comes from a little group, I don't know, some little hate group. It was the, the federal court, the Holy Land Foundation.
Before we do that, could we say hello and tell everybody who we
Go
are
ahead,
and
CJ.
why we're
Please
here
do. Please
today? So I would like to welcome everybody this Monday afternoon, October 28th, right?
Okay.
It's 5 minutes after 5, and you are watching and listening to TrentoVision on WNN 1470 AM, broadcasting to you from Boca Raton, Florida, and you can hear us all the way from Miami to Orlando on 1470 AM, or you can download WWNN on with your iHeart Radio app on your smartphone or other smart device.
Yes, you can.
You can watch us on TrentoVision.tv.
Yes.
Or theunitedwest.org or the teapartycommunity.com. And if you're listening to us in the car on your way home from work and you want to see the show or catch up on a bit that you missed, you can catch
see that stunning
our
video.
archives at youtube.com/theunitedwest. And substituting today for our host and fearless leader, Tom Trento, is our director, Jane Mark Campbell, in the first banana seat. And in the second banana seat is me, CJ, over here.
There.
Oh, here I am. And I would like to thank you all for joining us. Also, we have with us in the studio today our producer, Damon, and Invisible Mike, and our good friend, Imam Abdullah. I fool you, you fools.
Hello, infidels.
Yes, hello.
And we may have some other friends in the studio, and also we have a special guest coming up. And now tell
we
us
go
about
in.
ISNA.
Now, like we said, this hate group called the federal, because anybody who criticizes Islam is considered a hate group, by all kinds of groups, so.
Like the federal government.
Like the federal government, especially when the Holy Land Foundation trial, which has been appealed, upheld, and upheld, but many times, that they are actually a Hamas entity. And here is their
And
listing.
who is the Hamas entity?
Hamas, the one that likes to set off rockets down in Gaza and shoot them up to kill Jews.
Those
Oh,
guys.
yes.
Those guys.
Yes.
You mean the Partners for Peace?
The Partners for Peace. Our Partners for
okay.
Peace, the designated terrorist organization by
Well, that's just a
Canada and
temporary
others,
condition.
So
That's
they are
just
designated
temporary.
terrorist organization.
Okay.
And they said Hamas leaders and their representatives in various Middle Eastern African countries are, and here's the following, are individuals, entities who are were members of the U.S. Muslim Brotherhood, Islamic Society of North America, aka ISNA. And they go on further to say, these little wonderful words about ISNA.
So the President of the United States is sending anniversary greetings to ISNA,
You're right.
which is the stepchild of a terrorist organization, according to the same federal government
Yes.
that
Yeah, the ones that
presumably
right.
this president speaks for.
And they say ISNA and NATE, in fact, share more with the Holy Land Foundation.
And NATE is the North American Islamic Trust.
With the Holy Land Foundation than just a parent organization. They were intimately connected with the Holy Land Foundation and is assigned tasks of providing financial support to Hamas. And they go on further to say, and if you look at it here, defendants were operating in contact with a host of individuals and organizations dedicated to sustaining and furthering the Hamas movement,
Well, what does the Hamas movement stand for?
killing Jews.
Killing
Yes.
Jews everywhere, or
Eradicating Israel.
Eradicating anything Jewish, all Israelis, exterminating them. When I say they want to kill Jews, I mean they want to exterminate them.
Okay.
And not only just Jews, us as well.
what do you mean?
But
us as well?
secondary. Killing Jews is much more fun
Jews
than
and
Jews are much more fun to kill.
and unicorns.
And unicorns. and people like me. Right.
Nothing is more rewarding than killing a Jew.
All right, now
Okay,
here,
so this is a problem for some people.
Not for my people.
That's why I
have
said
a
some
problem with
people.
this.
You have a
I
problem with
this.
it.
I have a problem with this. Yes, I
That's
do.
right, right. Well, you just got back from Israel,
Yeah, I know,
so
and I saw it
you got the grand tour.
Yeah, and I was up there at the Hamas, Hezbollah border, all that good stuff, so.
Yeah.
Now, the objective of the conspiracy, according to the Holy Land Foundation trial, the objective of the conspiracy was to support Hamas. The support will be shown to have taken several forms, including raising money, propaganda, proselytizing, recruiting, as well as many other types of actions intended to continue to promote the movement and to forward Hamas's agenda of the destruction of the state of Israel and the establishment of Islamic State in its place.
Takbir!
Now,
I noticed not an Arab state in its place, but specifically an Islamic state.
an
in its
Islamic
place.
State in its place.
Okay.
Now, this is the whole intent of the Hamas movement.
Okay.
Now, which ISNA actively supports here in America to promote the support of Hamas so they can destroy Israel and kill Jews, which is their whole objective.
Now,
Go off my
ISNA
screen,
was
Mike.
just,
Mike, go back to my screen.
ISNA was just, what happened? They got kicked out of Canada?
You got
Kicked out of Canada, or
Well,
they lost
it
their,
lost its charitable.
they
lost
lost
its
their
charitable.
charitable status for not actually being a charity and for being promoters of terrorism. But is that the same ISNA as the United States ISNA?
Yes.
So
Exact. That's the ISNA
the
they're talking
Islamic
about.
Society of North America covers North America,
North
including
America.
Canada
Right.
and the United States.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, they also come down, and if we go to the next clip here, we will show that how did ISNA form? Where did it come from? Where was its roots? Where was its beginnings? And where was its, and how does it develop its ideology into a national perspective? Mike, come off my screen. Net 2. No, go into the next video, which is the ISNA video.
Oh, the DDR?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So this is how ISNA was founded.
Right, coming up here, right.
So does
Now,
it start
the reason
with?
this all comes into play because ISNA, who we just heard the president congratulate on their 50th year anniversary, was actually the MSA that is 50 years old. The biography of ISNA really doesn't come about until the 90s. What they are is basically they've melded the histories of the MSA, the Muslim Student Association, with ISNA. And basically ISNA is taking their history back to the formation of the MSA. And where this is going to tie into today's show and today's guest is the MSA is basically
Is ISNA.
is ISNA. And
Which
the MSA
is
is ISNA, and being there is this history of court issues with these
Right.
organizations, a lot of the newer Muslim student organizations have gotten away from the name MSA, and a lot of these newer ones are called Students for Justice in Palestine, which are equally, if not more, vile.
Okay,
Sure.
and all of these
And
groups.
we're going to be bringing our guest on shortly after this, and this is just to give you guys kind of a history of the
Right.
organizations we're dealing with.
And
Now,
all of these groups are the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States.
Exactly.
That's what people
Don't understand.
most need
Now, a
to
lot
know.
of people say that, oh, you guys are just conspiratorial. You're making this up. There's no connection whatsoever to ISNA and the Muslim
Tell that to the
Association.
Department of Justice.
And there's no connection whatsoever. You guys are just conspiratorial and just, oh my God, we can't believe how much stuff you guys make up. But you know what would be nice, Damon? If we actually had a video made by ISNA, which actually says they were founded by the MSA. I wonder if we could find a video like
I
that.
think you did.
I think we did.
Let's hit it.
Let's hit it, Mike. Go ahead.
It was just a thought. 1963, Urbana, Illinois. Just a thought from Muslim students who came together to make a chain. Just a thought. What if in faith we extend our hands to help one another? What if in unity we join
You have
hands
to
to help
explain this
others
to
understand?
to the listening audience.
Yes. You're
In the
listening to an
1950s and
ISNA
60s,
video.
nearly 500,000 Muslim students
And they
came
keep-
to the United
they keep
States for
showing
college
these,
or graduate school. Soon after their arrival, associations of Muslim students started sprouting across the continent, their sole aim being to facilitate religious obligations. By 1963, some had started to feel it was time for these disparate groups to take their work to the next level by networking and pooling their resources. And it was the recognition of this need to communicate and share that would lead to the formation of a National Muslim Students Association. A small Midwestern campus town, Urbana, Illinois, would become the birthplace of this broad-based collective Islamic movement in the U.S. and Canada. In 1963,
Resistance is futile.
representatives from various Muslim groups came together in the Student Union of the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaigns. The meeting's participants came to the decision to join together and coordinate their efforts in creating a structure that would help them found an Islamic environment for themselves, thereby enriching their knowledge and vowing to continuously interact with Muslims of all backgrounds and schools of thought, and to be able to share Islam with Muslims and Americans of all faiths. The national organization that would form would from then on be known as the Muslim Students Association of the U.S. and Canada, or MSA for short. After the formation of the organization, MSA was ready for its first convention held in Urbana, Illinois. There were in all 15 individuals representing less than 10 Muslim student organizations. News of the formation of the national MSA swept across the nation. More and more student organizations, from as far as the West Coast, the East Coast, Canada, and a host from the Midwest, started joining the MSA ranks. As the decades of the 1960s came to a close, it became increasingly clear that few of these overseas students were going back to their home countries. Pressure started building for the formation of an organization distinct from the MSA, one which would cater to the problems of Muslims living as a minority in a modern and highly assimilating non-Muslim society. The MSA leadership, looking forward to an expansion, decided in 1975 to move out of its office at the Al-Amin Mosque premises in Gary and create a full-time employee workforce, thus making the decision to build the large headquarters in Plainfield, Indiana. We could make a change. Just a thought that planted the seed that sprouted the Muslim Students Association. And soon, students on other campuses shared the vision.
They just showed a whole alphabet soup of other organizations, Muslim Brotherhood organizations.
Just a thought that
They
grew
keep showing
by the
these
activism
flowering
by
plants
volunteers,
sprouting.
leaders,
It's like invasion
Yeah.
of the
Venus
body
flytrap.
snatchers.
into the Islamic
The
Society of North America.
Welcome.
Welcome, to the
45th annual
ISNA
convention.
Ramadan, a time for change.
Congratulations. The MSA founded ISNA, Nate, and everybody else. And I'm sure that's none of that stuff is going on anymore, anywhere in the United States, except, hold on, we do have a guest that might want to give us an update on that.
We have a very, very highly regarded investigative journalist ready to come and join us, who documented the Students for Justice in Palestine at Stanford this last week.
Another one of those alphabet soup organizations, right?
And we're going to invite Lee Kaplan on to join us right now and tell us about it.
Hi, Lee.
Give me 30 minutes. Thank you.
Oh,
Hi,
there
Lee.
he
Try
is.
again.
Thanks for having me
there
on
he
your
is.
show. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes. So what did you think of ISNA's award-winning video tying the whole Muslim Brotherhood student organizations to NATE, ISNA, every other organization in the country? What do you think about that, Lee?
Well, think about it. This is an old story in the country. We've got a whole network of Islamist organizations. It's actually become a major big business here in the United States. However, what I came on to talk about tonight was the SJP, which is one facet, and of course they are linked to ISNA.
Right.
But their immediate purpose, is to try and help destroy Israel and turn around American public opinion against the Jewish state.
Yep. Well, exactly. And you were just there at Stanford doing an investigative.
Well, actually, I didn't get in this time.
Okay.
This is one of the things that's outrageous, is that the SJP, the national SJP, and the SJP organizations, I've been covering their national conferences since 2003.
I've been reading them.
When they first started doing them, for example, at Ohio State, they would put up aircraft-style metal detectors to keep people from going inside with recorders or cameras to see what's going on. Now, you stop and think about that for a second. This is a university campus. Why do they have to have a secret meeting that they can't let in people to see what they're talking about inside? And what's most outrageous is that the administrations on these campuses cooperate with them and let them do this. And I can tell you, I snuck in. I mean, on more than one occasion, I dyed my skin or colored my hair or wore a mustache.
Right.
I snuck in, and I did record them, and I did film them. And the things that they do, for example, is they have training sessions, how to recruit students here to go over to the West Bank and riot against the Israeli soldiers. If you watch riots there in Berlin and the villages out there, you'll see Americans mixed in there. Those are, students that they recruit at these things. They also talk about infiltrating Jewish organizations in the United States. For example, the Hillels on the campuses and such like that. I wrote and I warned about this as far back as 2003, that they were actually having seminars at these events.
That's right.
Training them to go into Hillel and act like they were Jews, to infiltrate Jewish federations, to do all manner of this stuff. And they're doing it left and right. For example, we had the Jewish Film Festival in San Francisco, with a propaganda film about Rachel Corrie, which was a complete hoax. And they continue to do these propaganda things. The girl who was in charge of the Israel group at UC Berkeley, at Hillel, her name is Avital Aboudi. She was sending out emails for anti-Israel events in Hillel. And when I challenged the Hillel director about that, he just took me off the email list. But as soon as she graduated, she was on the flotilla boat that the Mavi Marmara, which was raided by the Israeli soldiers legally. And she's over there in Israel now working with something called the Alternative Information Center, which is a for the PFLP.
Yeah, alternative. That's
These
actually
are
a good name
these are the people we encountered earlier this year at the SJP at Florida Atlantic University here in Boca Raton. Lee, I've been reading your articles that you've been doing on campus anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism for at least 10 years. A lot of people, unfortunately, haven't heard of you before. And I'm wondering, can you just go back a little bit, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started tracking all these Muslim hate groups on campuses in the U.S. and what else you do, because I see you track some interesting things from our good friends in Iran and other things going on around the world that you're involved with. So very interesting stuff.
Well, it's an interesting beginning I had. I mean, I worked on the campus at UC Berkeley for 14 years. I was actually a leaseholder on the campus. And at the end of 14 years, the university made some changes and they bought out my lease. And what happened was I had some free time and a little money in my pocket. And I went over to the campus for what they call the Yizkor service for the Holocaust Memorial. And that's where they read the names of the dead from the Holocaust. And I had on an Israeli flag jacket that I had. I've always been a strong booster of Israel. And I was reading the names of the dead when a girl came over to me from the Hillel, which is the campus Jewish organization. And she asked me would I not participate in the Yizkor service because I had on an Israeli flag on my jacket.
Oh my God.
I said, "You're joking." And she said, "Yes." I said, "Well, why would you not want me to have an Israeli flag on my jacket?" So she said, "Well, we don't want to offend the Jews for Palestine." And I said, "What? What are you talking about, Jews for Palestine?" She said, "Oh, yeah, they're demonstrating over there." So anyway, I gave him the list.
This was back in the 80s or the 90s?
This was 2000, about 2002.
Oh, wow.
2003. And I walked over and I saw they had this huge demonstration going on against Israel, organized by the SJP. They were carrying on. They had bullhorns. They had signs. They had wall displays, all kinds of stuff. I look around, and the only Jewish kids I see are a few Russian kids who had taken some notebook paper and put "Support Israel" by hand on it. And I walked up to them and I said, "Is this what goes on here?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, isn't Hillel helping you to organize a counter demonstration?" And they said, "Oh no, Hillel doesn't help us at all." So I said, "I'll tell you what, fellas, I got some money in my pocket. Next time I'm going to help you." So we organized DAFKA, which is DAFKA, Defending America for Knowledge and Action, DAFKA.org, and we're on the web. My websites, I apologize, are messed up. We were hacked into during Operation Cast Lead, and they made a mess of everything. But that can at least give people an idea of the organization. But what we did was we started setting up a table on the campus, and we brought in a 19-inch TV set and a battery. And we brought in a flagpole which had an American and Israeli flag on it. And we began screening Arab and Palestinian television, the Quad. And everything we used, the materials we used, were all from the Arab press and the Arab media.
Right.
And it showed the anti-Semitism, the anti-American, the hatred, and the fact that they weren't seeking peace. And ultimately, what happened was my students graduated, and we kind of fell apart. And part of the problem also was not just the Arab groups. The Arab groups actually became afraid of us. At first, they carried on, and they tried to make a stink about us. And I said, well, what are you complaining about our material for? It's all Palestinian material.
Right.
At which point, there were some Jewish groups associated with Hillel who told the students not to cooperate with us. We were extremists. We weren't encouraging peace. Which
if you say anything against Islam, you're not encouraging peace, because first of all, you're an apostate to Islam, and that comes right from the OIC and their definition of what hate speech is. And if you say anything critical or anything derogatory about anything about Muslims, you are hater. Speech. Therefore, what that enables them to do is to attack you with rockets and bombs. And that's their justification for going to war, always with Israel and always with
that's right. The great provocation is Jews, wherever Jews defend themselves, it's a problem. And building bridges of peace means sitting down and having lunch with the people who want to exterminate you.
And as a side note, Lee, if you look at it in a psychology fashion, it's a classic male-female abuse structure where whatever you say can set the guy off and he can beat you. That's the concept, the psychological concept of our relationship, our current relationship with the Muslims. But getting back to
just real quick, this is so what he's talking about. If you remember last year when we went to FAU,
right?
Their SJP was having Greta Berlin speak.
That's what I said.
Yeah. And the leader of Hillel at FAU
wanted us to leave.
Did not want us to even question why SJP was having hate preachers there. So we had the leader of the Hillel at FAU busting our chops when all we were there to do is protect the Jewish students.
And P.S., he lost his position with Hillel at FAU a few months ago and recently surfaced as the South Florida director for J Street.
Well, I was just going to say that the campus director for the Israel program at Berkeley, it turned out, a fellow named Gordon Gladstone, in fact, was the one who told the kids not to associate with DAFCO, that we were extremists and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He today works for J Street. And J Street is actually a front financed by Iran and George Soros.
Right.
So, this is the infiltration that goes on. And this was the first thing that gave me an inkling as to what this time I began working as a journalist for Front Page Magazine. Right. I haven't actually written for them in 10 years. But, not on a regular basis. But what happened was on one assignment, I went to the Ohio State National Conference. Right. And that's where I actually saw they would have a seminar and they would talk about infiltrating Jewish organizations and trying to reframe, the view of young American secular Jews that a Jewish state is wrong, that it's racist, or that it's exclusionary, which Israel's the only state that isn't an apartheid state in the Middle East. But they would start using the word apartheid and try to frame the discussion. And since then, they've come up with tons of front groups. They have Jewish Voice for Peace. They have the J Street. They have other organizations that they start. A lot of the so-called Jews are not even real Jews in these groups.
Right.
Why do you? Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Actually, is why do you think these so-called, and I say so-called because they don't seem very Jewish to me, but why do you think these so-called Jewish groups are so susceptible to the Muslim propaganda against Judaism and against Zionism? What makes them so easy for it?
It's not that they're susceptible. If you look at what they say, and you have to understand something. See, they use you were saying earlier, they use the idea of saying that they're promoting peace, but that's the shield. If you look at most of these people, for example, Jewish Voice for Peace, most of the leadership in Jewish Voice for Peace are Marxists, okay? They're not necessarily Islamists, but they're Marxists. And as Marxists, they want to destroy America, they want to destroy Israel. Anti-Zionism is part of Stalin's foreign policy.
Right.
And they're carrying this forward. And Jews are actually the glue between the Marxists and the Islamists in the SJP. So what you have, if you look at I'm talking about the leadership, for example, of SJP. There, you can find that they were members in college of Marxist organizations, pro-communist organizations. Well, you say, well, communism is dead, right? Well, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Right.
And what they have done is they've gotten influxes of money from Arab causes to help finance them, and they've managed to build an organization which is basically a front group. There are certain Jews probably who fall for their stuff about their for peace and all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. But what they do is they add, for example, if SJP, Jewish has a mailing list, I think, of 100,000 people. I doubt that they're all members of Jewish Voice for Peace. However, they tell everybody there's 100,000 members of Jewish Voice for Peace. Well, there aren't. And a lot of the people in these groups also who say that they're Jewish, some of them were born from Jewish families, but they don't practice Judaism. A lot of them don't know anything about Judaism.
Right.
A colleague of mine was at a demonstration once in San Francisco, and they had supposedly Jewish Voice for Peace there demonstrating against Israel and in favor of Hamas. Mm-hmm. And there was a family there, and there were two boys wearing yarmulkes, holding signs against Israel. And he went up to the two boys and he said, say the Shema. Now, the Shema is the basic prayer of Jews. Hear, Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You say it in Hebrew. Kids didn't know what he was talking about.
Okay.
And the kids were not Jewish. They were wearing yarmulkes to pose as Jews.
To pose as Jews.
With the ISM, for example, on the Mavi Marmara, some of the people who claimed that they were Jews on the boats, sailing to Gaza to support Hamas, were not Jews at all. They weren't even of Jewish ancestry. Okay. But they go around and say that they're Jews.
Okay.
Now, are there Jews in these groups? There are some. And there are some those. Mandy Patinkin, I wrote an article about him. There's a case in there. Did you want to ask me a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of interject here, and you correctly stated that the leadership, most of the leadership of these groups are Marxists or some type of, wild-eyed leftist socialist or communist.
They see themselves as revolutionaries.
Yeah, they're revolutionaries. That they believe that in some Star Trek fantasy world, that if we have world global socialism, that we'll have some type of special generators to produce all our food. But getting past that, getting down to the individual people, is a lot of these people who come into these groups who aren't Jewish, who have no Jewish ancestry, or do have Jewish ancestry but have no idea about their Judaism. They do have a core goodness about them. They think they're doing something good for peace. But like I was saying earlier, they get trapped in this abusive relationship. And I'm not talking about a physically abusive relationship. I'm talking about the mentally abusive relationship, where if you say anything wrong, I'm going to beat you with words and make you feel bad. Now, this is the way you have to be controlled to please me, the Islamic entity, if you will. And so once they get into that back and forth, they become, in essence, controlled by this domineering Muslim force over them, and the domineering Muslim force says, listen, you need to hate Israel to be friends with me, and if you don't do that, I'm going to call you a hater. And they get in this mindset, they get trapped the whole way through it.
Let me say that's a tactic, and it's true. However, they don't really think of themselves as promoting peace. That's the line to justify what they say and do. What they really want to do, and they really mean this, is they want to destroy the Jewish state of Israel and turn it into another Arab-dominated state. They also, in the long term, want to destroy the United States as a capitalist democracy.
Right.
And Israel is the canary in the mine. Israel is the first step. Once they can dismantle Israel, then they can go to the United States. Now, to give you an illustration, at Duke University, one of their leaders, and the anti-Israel movement, is a fellow named Abe Greenhouse. who is of Jewish descent, but I don't think knows anything about Judaism,
Right.
But is also, as he defines himself, an anarchist.
Mhm.
And one of the things he was teaching, or one of the things, excuse me, that he said at Duke University was that the riots on the West Bank every week, for example, are practice and training for the so-called anarchist revolutionaries, Jews and Arabs, and the whole gamut of them, to eventually bring that to the United States.
That's right.
And I've written before that what they really hope to do is eventually they're going to cause the downfall of the Jewish government in Israel. And then they want to come to the United States, and they're going to do this on the Mexican border also.
Well, that's why you see so much crossover between the Occupy movement and the Islamic groups here in the United States, like Samantha Bowden.
Well, it's like we caught back in Occupy.
From Occupy
They're
going
all-
over to CARE.
Like Occupy Orlando, we were the first to break the story nationally that the Occupy movements were being founded by CARE, the Council of American Islamic Relations. We,
Malik Muhammad, who was the CARE guy down in Miami, was behind the Occupy Miami.
And so you have a lot of these Islamic groups funding these anarchical, destroy America movements. Excuse me. And this is, they're just a driving force to these people who want, in their own way, to destroy America. They have the same common ideology, which is first we must both destroy America before either of our ideologies can occur. Similarly, the same type of methodology that happened between Hitler and Stalin before World War II, when they were actually working together to destroy,
Right.
Well, those
to bring it back.
Hold on, let me finish up the
Okay.
little thought here was, but what these leftists, these socialists, these Marxists do not understand, and they can't get it through their head, is as soon as us as the enemy are gone, they're going to kill them immediately. They're going to be the first on the hit list.
They don't get that come the revolution, you're the first to go
yes.
concept. But Lee, if I could bring it back to if we can bring it back to the campuses and these kids who are influenced,
Right.
because I'm not talking about the people who are leading these organizations. I'm asking about the kids who are attracted to the SJP, who allow themselves to be infiltrated and influenced in Hillel and other organizations. I think there's two things at play here that I want to ask Lee about, and one of them is the most recent Pew poll about Judaism in the United States and how that plays into it. So I think part of the problem that we have here is we have generations of students who are basically brought up without a Jewish or Zionist foundation in their pocket when they graduate high school and they go off to college. The other thing is, for at least the last 20 years, what's been going on in this country is a whole movement where your feelings and yourself are more important than logic and reason.
Right.
And people
getting
are not
along and
able
having
to
your-
critically think. And so if somebody presents them with an agenda that says this is going to promote peace, and you can feel good about yourself as a person by getting behind it, regardless of the fact that you recognize its totalitarianism nature,
Right.
it doesn't matter. I'm doing something good. These people don't even stand for the worst aspects of it when they get into it. They eventually get co-opted to that point.
Well, that's what I was trying to explain
So-
earlier. But yeah, let's let Lee.
Because
Lee,
Lee has
let me-
spent so much time on
let's let Lee comment here
campuses.
for a second.
Is that what you see?
There's some truth to that, but actually, like I said, this has become a business. Also, it's a case of delivering the message. Here, you'll find the Jewish organizations that are pro-Israel keep wanting to talk peace. And anybody who points out the fact that the Arabs are doing anything but approaching peace, for example, Arab atrocities, is silenced because they say, oh, that's going to hurt the peace process. Now, what the other side is doing, which makes them so successful, is they are unceasingly claiming atrocities. The Jews are committing atrocities
Yeah,
against
that's
the
true.
Arabs,
Yeah.
comparable to what the Nazis did to the Jews.
Right.
And of course, it's nonsense and it's not true. However, when you get a steady diet of this every day on campus. If you walk across UC
It goes
Berkeley,
back to if you repeat the same big lie, eventually it gets to be taken as the truth.
Yeah, that's true. But giving people who are on our side a little insight into the into the Democrat head. One of their big things that they always jump around and latch onto is they love to support victims. Whenever there's a victim, they love to rally around and, oh my God, this person's being abused. Oh, we're coming here to rescue you, to save you. We're the great saviors of you victims. And the Muslims get that. They understand the Democratic head better than the Republicans do, because when you break it all down, they have become victims for the last 60 years. In fact, when a child is born over, this is what we found out, we just went to Israel, when a child is born over in the occupied territories, they are giving a card as a birth certificate as a refugee. When they are born there, 6 generations down the street, they will never, never, never want to not become victims. They will always want to be victims in that area.
Let me say a couple of things here. It doesn't matter if they're Democrats or Republicans.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you're in favor of Obamacare or against Obamacare. These are domestic issues. They have nothing to do with Israel and the propaganda and what they're doing to try and destroy it. And one of the problems, too, is that we have American political parties lining up saying, well, if I'm a Democrat or if I'm a Republican, I have to be against Israel. No, it doesn't work that way. It has nothing to do with Israel. What we have to do is we have to get the truth out. One of the things I'm doing is I'm starting a new organization which will be Stop U.S. Taxpayer Ripoff and No Palestinian Terror State. And we're going to start using their tactics against them. They say all the time, $3 billion of U.S. tax money gets wasted on Israel every year. Well, that money comes back in a profit for America. We're going to start showing how much money, and President Obama just gave $1 billion in the last year of our tax dollars to Abbas's Palestinian Authority.
$1 billion. 1 billion, right?
Well, that's just in 1 year. We're talking 20 years of getting financial aid from the United States, from the Arab League, from the EU.
The EU.
And you've only got about 4.5 million Palestinians altogether there. Every one of them could be living in a villa today. Every one of them could be living in a villa today with a Cadillac in the garage for the kind of money that we give them. And it just goes into private pots. The PLO is one of the wealthiest organizations in the world, and the Palestinians get more foreign aid than any other group. And I want to try and get to a point where we stop giving our tax dollars to them, and Americans are dead set against welfare. Let's face it, either party. And we have the biggest welfare chiefs over there in the PLO, and they claim that they're so disadvantaged and they're starving, but they're not. And if you look on TV when you see them if you look on TV when you see them,
right,
you know, not walking around like in Rwanda with no shoes and no clothes and everything. They're all well clothed, they're all fed, and everybody's okay. So, you know, it's time that this become the concentration of what goes on here in the United States. And to that effect, I want to start another website. But the thing is, the SJP, what they've succeeded in doing, and I say this is with the cooperation of the U.S. government and the college administrators also, is they've created an atmosphere. Before, when immigrants came to the United States, they wanted to become Americans, and they wanted the American psyche and personality. Now, when they come, they want to run the home team back in the Middle East. So what they'll do is they'll take an Arab-American student or the offspring of Arab-American immigrants who's going to college, and they'll convince him he has to have a national identity with the Palestinians, who are terrorists, who are trying to destroy the Jews. And then it becomes, and in the mosques this goes on too. You mentioned I've been working on other things. Yeah, I've gone undercover in mosques, and I've also been exposing things about the Iranians. I've been on Iranian press TV almost every week for the last 2 months, speaking actually in favor of America and debating ex-American patriots, expatriates who repeat Iranian propaganda against the U.S. So, you know, but, you know, this is what we're up against. We also have a problem where the Saudi influence in the government has had a tremendous effect on the colleges and on promoting this anti-Israel attitude.
Well, if you want to go to Alawi bin Talal, the Alawi bin Talal is, has his hands in getting major funding to CARE, the Council of American-Islamic Relations, funding,
He funds a lot.
He funds a lot
The
of
Saudis
universities.
The Saudis fund Nate,
Yeah,
the largest
but-
deed holder of mosques in the United States.
And you also have Alawi bin Talal funding, the second
$10 million for a chair at this university,
20 at
20
George
for another.
Washington.
$20 million to Georgetown,
Yeah.
$20 million to, I
Yeah.
think it was Harvard or
That
Yale.
buys
Yeah.
a lot of.
And also the second largest stockholder in Fox News. I mean, come on.
that buys a lot of
It
influence.
does. It does.
Why
Well,
do-
what was also said about victimization is also a big thing of it. I mean, you have a case. One of the seminars they had at one of these national conferences was how to infiltrate college administrations. So now, succession of time, some of these SJP leaders, they graduate and they become deep administrative positions. There's a fellow named Mohammed Abed at the University of Washington who is now a dean there, who was one of the leaders in the SJP.
That's right.
And what they're doing is they're taking over the colleges and they're actually getting them funding to continue this program.
Well, I got a question for you about the SJP, because we're starting to see more and more distancing from the MSA organizations and more aligning themselves with the Students for Justice for Palestine. Is it just our natural name change maturation, or is it or is it something more than that, or are they actually more with different organizations? What is it?
The SJP, as I mentioned before, is made up, it's a combination of Marxists who aren't necessarily Islamists.
Okay.
The majority of the Palestinians in the SJP are Islamists, just like the majority of the Palestinians in the Middle East and in Israel. I think 96% of them are Muslims. But there's also the Christians. See, they don't miss a beat. They find every angle to deconstruct opinion which is favorable to Israel to try and for example, it used to be that most of the Palestinians in the United States were Christian Palestinians, which is a minority, and because they were persecuted by Muslims, were not necessarily sympathetic to the PLO. But what you have today is you have factions of the ISM who are at these conferences, like Seville, for example, which is a front set up, and replacement theology. National News today, very good by Manfred Gerstenstein, where he talks about how the Palestinians now are working on the 100 million evangelicals in America.
That's right.
To try
Yeah.
and convince them to support the Palestinians.
That's not
against
going
the
to
Jews.
work.
Yeah, actually, it actually has been working, and it's been working too well. There's a big movement in the evangelical movement in this country towards leftism and against Zionism.
Yeah, but as the poll came out, the same poll that was not very favorable for the Jewish opinions, that over 80% of U.S. evangelicals were pro-Israel.
Right.
Over 80%.
That's not.
Well, I know,
That's
but what Lee's talking about is a whole different movement and something that's just sprung up in like the last 5 years, where really the left wing is starting to influence these the pastors who lead these mega churches.
Right.
Okay,
Right, the movement
that
is starting, but
that
the
is-
evangelicals are still over 80%
but that's
pro-Israel.
okay, but that's where it
There was-
starts.
there was-
It's
There was a time when it was 100%. The
That's
fact of
what
the
I'm
matter
saying,
is
yes.
They're working their way in, and they're starting to change things. The pastor at Saddleback, one of the big mega churches, Saddleback, down in Orange County,
Yeah.
they're pushing replacement theology. That they
yes.
should support the Palestinians. See, the one thing that gets lost in all this, which is amazing to me, is the fact that the Palestinian movement is a fascist movement. It is a
It really
dictatorship.
is.
It is a kleptocracy, and Israel is a modern democracy. Yet they manage to fool American audiences into thinking that the democratic, human rights, social movement is really the Palestinians, and the Israelis are the abusers. And I hate to tell you, even in Israel, you have leftist factions who try to push that idea too.
That's
They
right.
think
Well, that's why you've
they
had
think
20
it is-
years of Oslo.
Sorry?
That's why you've had 20 years of Oslo nonsense.
Right, right. And you have a situation there where somebody like Shimon Peres, for example, who was one of the architects of Oslo, he's
Yeah.
so intent on this going through no matter what. He'll fight for it to the last drop of everybody else's blood.
Everybody else's.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Everybody else's
Shimon
blood.
Peres is
And
the
this is
president
what's
of
going
Israel.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to go back a few minutes ago from we were talking about the commonality of some of these SJP, MSA leaders and the Occupy movement. Last month at FAU, if you'll remember, on their apartheid wall was a big sign that said Occupy AIPAC.
That's
Right.
right.
So, I mean, that was a clear visualization of the Red-Green Alliance and the Occupy/SJP coming together of sick minds.
Right.
Listen, if you want to hear, I got to tell you this story, because if you want to hear about insanity, Mustafa Barghouti, excuse me,
Yeah,
Omar
which Barghouti? Yeah.
Omar Barghouti. It's the founder of the academic and cultural boycott of Israel. He's actually, well, he was anyway, he probably still is, a student at Tel Aviv University. He's not even a Palestinian. He's from, I believe, Qatar or Kuwait. But one of the things that I saw during the Occupy movement in Oakland, I went undercover to a speech by him at a Presbyterian church in Oakland. And the audience was almost 100% Jewish Voice for Peace members, okay?
So preaching
he's
to
just
the
true in the
choir.
speech, and he talks about how the Jews shouldn't have Israel and all this stuff. And then at one point in the speech, he says, and everybody knows that Jesus was not a Jew, he was a Palestinian.
Oh,
Yeah.
no!
Just wait. Now, no, well, Arafat used to say that too, but now you got to understand something. This is a church full of supposedly Jews, Jewish Voice for Peace members.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that they gave him a standing ovation
They gave him standing ovation. Wow.
when he finished his speech?
Wow.
And,
Of course they
that
did.
shows you the revolutionary,
Well-
think speak and think mind.
Think speak.
Well, here's the thing. What was the story where the other day we're on CNN, and I wish we had the clip of it. We don't. But the person on the CNN, they were talking about the Hajj and people going into Mecca, and of course, and the story of, well, everybody knows who was on the stone when the knife went down in
Abraham.
Abraham and who?
And his son.
Ishmael, right? And no, that's what she said. She came out
I
and
know
said,
that's what she
she came out-
said.
Basically.
no. She came out and said it was Abraham and Ishmael, and there's this other, fable or myth.
Oh, and by
out
the way, there's other fables.
There's a similar tale
There's
in
a
the Torah.
similar tale to this in the Torah.
And this is what's become the authoritative,
Right.
speak
Well, I
on
have-
campuses and on media.
Lee is doing a lot of work to try to expose, presumably the donors to these universities
Yes.
where these hate fests are taking place, who are allegedly adults. And have influence supposedly over their children who are students in these institutions. But I have to say that without a huge cultural shift in this country towards some kind of sanity, I don't see where there's any adults in the room in this country. They're not in the government, they're not in the media, they're not in academia. There's a few people like Lee Kaplan and David Horowitz and Tom Trento and J. Mark Campbell out there trying to expose the truth of what's happening in this country. But this country is so dummied down that I don't even know how you think you can begin to penetrate anything that turns this around.
Well, one of the things that I try to do with DAFCA is I try to get students to do investigative journalism like I do. An example, there's a gal named Anna Balzer who has lectured at about 500 because she's a Jewish girl and she went to Israel on the birthright program, had this epiphany where now she supports the Palestinians. And I actually did research on her, and I found out she's a fraud. I mean, she says she's a Fulbright scholar. She's not a Fulbright scholar. She says that there was a case in Israel where a Palestinian woman lost 2 fetuses.
What?
Lost.
Early
You repeat that. We lost you there for a second, Lee. Who
Okay.
said?
I started this. I did an article in the Israel National News about Anna Balzer, which I'd like to mention her here.
Okay.
If anyone hears about her coming. She says that she's a Jewish woman. She feels a Jewish obligation to support the Palestinians and for the end of the Jewish state and all this other stuff. And she is a fraud and a liar. She says
She claims all
she's
these
a
organizations.
She gives a story where she says a Palestinian woman aborted 2 fetuses at a checkpoint because 2 Israeli soldiers wouldn't let her through the checkpoint, and they said, we're just following orders, and the babies died. The whole thing is a lie. In fact, she's making money lecturing and has books out and all this other stuff. And I'm going to expose her to the public in the long run. She's pregnant now. She's going to have a baby. We got Rosemary's Baby coming out, I guess. But the fact is, these people are admitted by the
frauds,
even by the law schools, to come in and lecture to the students, and they tell the worst propaganda and lies.
Well, look at John McCain. Look at John McCain and this shill for the Free Syrian Army, who fooled everybody, got fired, and then got hired by Senator McCain. So it's not surprising you would find them on campuses.
I know. Well, Lee, we're going to have to let you go. We're coming up here at the end of our show.
And thank you for staying with us for so long. And please keep us updated.
Right. And please keep us updated on
and
future
really
events.
good to meet you. Thank
Same
you
here.
for what you do.
Thanks again, Lee. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I'm so excited.
Bye-bye.
I've been reading his articles for at least 10 years. I love working on this show. I get to meet all the stars.
All these cool people.
Yeah.
That is one of the benefits. And it's just,
You know, one of the amazing thing, we didn't, as great as it was talking to Lee, we didn't get a ton into his article that he wrote about what went on in Stanford with the SJP. But it was invitation only, and to qualify, they basically screened you, Mark, probably harder than you getting into Israel.
Yeah.
Okay, if you had one iota of dissent with the hardcore, there is no Israel, SJP line, you weren't getting into this event. Whether it be media, student, alumni, it did not matter. They had to screen you and make sure that you were 100% ideologically aligned to get into this event.
one person who would have gotten in there would have been our president, since he has aligned himself obviously with ISNA and everything else like that.
I could have taken him there myself.
Yeah, you would have gotten in.
You would have gotten in, Imam Abdullah.
So what is our timing?
Yeah, we got 1 minute left here.
1 minute left.
So, and all right, we're
real
going to mention the bombings down in
Israel,
Gaza.
in the Gaza Strip. We have to say that Hamas launched rockets into Israel from Gaza.
Right.
The Israeli Air Force did responded and took
And that's
out some
what makes it
underground.
news today, because otherwise it's just another day in paradise.
Another day of bombing.
Iraq blew up over the weekend with Sunni on Shia violence as usual.
Gosh, we could just
India,
replay last week's
Muslims
tally.
went crazy killing Hindus in India over the weekend.
Religion of peace.
But that's not news.
Pieces.
Yeah, the religion of pieces.
The religion
All
of
right.
peace.
Well,
All right.
time to
Well,
say
Thank
goodbye.
you, everybody, for watching and listening to TrentoVision. We'll be back tomorrow. Maybe
Thank
we'll
you,
have
Lee
Tom.
Kaplan.
Maybe we won't.
Good
Thank you, Lee
night,
Kaplan. And we'll
sweetheart.
see you soon.
Good night.
Oh, he's such a good singer.
You sound good for an infidel.
For a unicorn.
Bye-bye.